In our stories today, we have child and youth safety online, addressing the growing issue of indecent exposure and ensuring safety on the internet, plus the ongoing fight against drugs, recreational drug use, and the impact it has on consumers. Then we head into unrest in Kenya, examining the power struggle between the state and the citizens, and the Middle East, under close watch for disregard of human rights as conflict remains rampant. Join us today on In the Loop. Live from In the Loop newsroom, I am Alvin Kioli, and we welcome and thank our viewers in Kenya and around the world for joining us today. We are with you for the next 30 minutes to bring you the latest. This is In the Loop. You can join in on the conversation on our social media handles at In the Loop. Our first story is on child and youth safety online, the ongoing issue of indecent exposure. In today's digital world, children and young people all over are increasingly exposed to risks online, such as indecent exposure. This issue involves the sharing of explicit content through social media, messaging apps, and websites, often unsolicited. Join us as we dive into the growing problem of online indecent exposure, its impact on the youth, and discuss ways to better protect them in the digital age.
In today's digital world, children and young people are spending more time online than ever before. Social media, messaging apps, and websites provide platforms for self-expression, but they also expose them to a growing range of risks. One of the most alarming threats is online indecent exposure, an issue that affects the safety and well-being of children and youth all over. The unsolicited sharing of explicit content via social media platforms and messaging apps has become a rising concern. For many, these unsolicited images and messages are not just disturbing, but a violation of their personal safety.
And now correspondent Jordan Nyabuto joins us live. Jordan, do you think enough is being done in terms of regulation and censorship of content that is found online?
Unfortunately not. While there are some measures in place, there's still a long way to go in terms of comprehensive regulation. We need more stringent policies that can effectively curb online indecent exposure and other harmful content.
And do you feel as if enough importance is being placed on this issue by the public at large?
Unfortunately not, but hopefully this will enlighten a lot of people to take interest in matters such as these that are deemed of utmost importance.
Our listeners have been engaging us on X, and this is what they had to say on the issue. The point being made across the board is that more should be done to prevent such an issue. Now we go ahead and meet our experts who are joining us. Well, thank you for giving us your time. And this is our psychologist by the name of...
My name is Mary. I'm a counseling psychologist working for Build and Restore, and I'm very glad to be here.
What psychological impact does exposure to explicit content at a young age have on children, and how does it affect them going into their youth?
The psychological effect would be that they begin to see certain images, for example, nudity, even violence, and basically we're calling it explicit information because they should not actually have it in the first place, but for whatever reason they have gained access to it. And if they are seeing people who are naked, maybe people who are having sexual interactions, that will affect them because then they are curious. They begin to wonder what exactly is going on if they are not already exposed to that. But most of them would know what sex would be about, generally speaking, even though not necessarily in detail. So then what would happen at that age is that they would want, out of curiosity, they would want to experiment, and see how does it feel. Am I able to repeat? Am I able to do what I saw in the material that I got access to, whether it was in form of videos or clips that they would find in the social media platforms, or whether it's actually real material that they can look because there are drawings, there are graphics around it, then they would get very curious and they would want to experiment and see what that feels like. And
How can we teach kids to protect themselves from harmful content online?
that's a difficult one because there's so much accessibility. Days are gone when we used to say, when kids are watching TV, or they're with their parents, therefore the parents are going to ensure that that doesn't happen. Children at a very early age, they have phones, they have passwords, and even if they don't have their own phones, they have phones that belong to their friends. So accessibility is really a big thing. So teaching themselves, I think, would be possible, but a challenge. I would more look at it from the point of, have the parents helped them learn not to access such sites or situations that will create such tension. And if the parents have taught them, then how can they help themselves is basically to follow through, to trust that their parents know what they are talking about because they've been there, and they understand the repercussions of what that means, even though that's very difficult. But there are children who would be given to, my dad and mom said no, and so I won't do it. There are children also who will say, my teacher said no, and so I will not do it because it is not good. But then the third aspect, so that's basically for them making a decision to listen to the people in authority, teachers and parents, but also there's peer. Peer is very important.
How can digital addiction contribute to increased exposure to inappropriate online content?
Okay, so digital exposure, increased digital exposure, what that means is you're consuming. So if it's the preteens, teens, or whatever age, they become consumers of such information. And anything that you take in excess will be a problem, because then you can't handle, you're not able to digest it. You're not able to, take it in and use it usefully. You will find there are excesses that are of no use to you, and then what do you do with that? So, the simplest way I would think of this is basically it's like food. If we eat food and we're being greedy, we're being gluttonous, or if we eat food at an age that is not appropriate for us, then we find we have indigestion, we have, constipation, we have bloating, we have challenges to our health, which makes it difficult for us to be able to stay healthy. So the same thing with, explicit information that is coming from the social media or digital world and is in excess, then there is no capacity to actually be able to hold in the information, to internalize it, and to actually find productivity in it because the age is inappropriate. If we're talking about being nude and the implications around it, sex, there's an age that can handle that, but there's an age that can't handle that. So anything that is in excess would be dangerous and would not be helpful at any point.
Thank you for joining us in studio. Now, with us, we have a parent who can speak from experience, and we had a few questions from our viewers and all over. As a parent, how challenging is it to monitor your child's online activity while still respecting their privacy?
The tips I would parents first and foremost is stop being oblivious, thinking that these things only happen to other people. Talk about the digital footprints that they put out there. For instance, if they're playing games, are they allowed to chat with strangers? Are they allowed to play with multiplayers and people they do not know? Are you allowing your children to create friends online? And also, even when they're in the class setup, and this is especially for educators, are you also managing the class the class platforms that you're using to teach your children? For instance, we like using Zoom. Once all your participants are in the class, are you locking it so that there are no strangers coming in? Also, are you enabling your children to know that the class ID and the password is private information? They are not supposed to just share those things with everybody.
Joining us now is a digital media expert. Thank you for giving us your time. We had a few questions for you, hoping that you'd enlighten us. Do current online safety regulations and policies adequately protect children from explicit content?
Not fully, I can say. While there are safeguards like age restrictions and filters, many children still access explicit content due to loopholes and weak enforcement. Regulations haven't kept pace with evolving online risks.
What are the biggest challenges in enforcing stricter censorship on social media platforms?
Oh well, I can say it's about balancing free speech with safety, handling massive volumes of content, and applying consistent rules across different countries to make enforcement difficult. Here, moderation isn't always accurate either.
How can digital literacy and education programs help combat the spread of inappropriate content online?
They empower users to recognize, avoid, and report harmful content. Educated users, especially youth, are better equipped to protect themselves and others with money.
Now we go into the second developing story, which is on the ongoing fight against drugs. A persevering battle that wages on, the fight against drugs has become more rampant than ever, but this has not deterred its abuse. Despite efforts to curb the supply and consumption of illicit substances, addiction continues to destroy lives, tearing families apart, straining public health systems, and having adverse mental health impacts. But amidst the challenges, there are also stories of resilience, recovery, and relentless efforts to combat this epidemic. So what progress has been made? What is being done? Join us as we take a deep dive into this issue and get involved by reaching out to us on our social media handles at In The Loop. We go outside to our correspondent, Jordan Nyabuto, who has more for us.
Drug uses has surged, impacting the health, safety, and well-being of individuals, particularly the youth. From substance abuse disorders to an increase in crime rates and drastic deterioration in mental health, the effects of drug abuse extend beyond the individual user. Communities and law enforcement agencies are struggling to curb drug abuse. Social workers report a spike in drug dealer-related mental health cases. Here's what young people have to say about their experiences.
When you put it in powder, in beer, my God, you are flat. You will take everything of yours, even socks, even your trouser. You can even go with it.
Because of this.
The fight against drug abuse remains a shared responsibility, one that calls for awareness, support systems, and stronger community actions. As the number rises, so does the need for urgent collective intervention. This has been Jordan Nyabuto.
Now, thank you for joining us in studio. We have our expert, who is a psychologist.
Hi, my name is Neka Ene. I did my master's in the Eastern University in counseling psychology. Drugs of addiction or substances of addiction or behaviors of addiction each of them would do something different to the brain. So take, for example, a drug of addiction, a substance of addiction. They're called psychoactives. So that means that they will alter how the brain functions. So if your brain functions this way normally, a psychoactive substance will alter how the brain functions. So instead of doing that, imagine that the brain suddenly starts to behave this way. So it will behave different from what it is stipulated to do. And different how would now be the challenge. Is it different this way? Is it different this way? I'm trying to simplify it into, acceptable language, not just talk about it as mental health jargon, right? So anything that will alter how the brain functions is a psychoactive substance. whether it is coffee, or it is cocaine, or it is, marijuana, so long as that thing alters how the brain functions, it is a drug of addiction, and it is a psychoactive drug.
Joining us now in studio is our drug expert. Thank you for your time. We have a few questions for you. So the first one is, how do drugs chemically alter the body, leading to dependency?
Initially, how substance abuse has evolved, alcohol has remained the most abused. Alcohol has remained. But now we've seen a trend whereby there is too much of cocaine and heroin in the market. So now it is readily available. Cocaine and heroin was rare, but right now it is commonly available. And then with the teenagers and young adults, we are seeing them moving from tobacco, from nicotine, to vaping. So right now, at the moment, vaping is the in thing for the young people. They are now using vaping electronic cigarettes, which have more side effects than even the previous nicotine, normal tobacco smoking. Yeah, so the trends we've seen among the young people now, we are seeing a lot of vaping. And then alcohol, we are now seeing more ladies getting into alcohol abuse, substance abuse, compared to the men. Yeah, right now we can't say that there's a big gap between the males and the female in the way they are abusing these substances.
Okay.
So it's like females and males are closing in. The gap is not big.
Okay.
Female.
What impact does drug legalization or decriminalization have on public health outcomes?
Yeah, legalization increases abuse of these drugs among all the old and young, and then decriminalization means we are here. It normalizes the use of drugs. This is what it does. It just normalizes the use of drugs. That even if you find someone doing things like cocaine and heroin, it's accepted. So therefore, you don't have to report them or find out where they are getting them. So many people are going to get into these drugs, and we will not have a community, and we will not have a nation, because the whole nation will be drinking. The whole nation will be doing whatever they want to do. And you realize that for someone to abuse substances, there's an underlying factor. There's a social factor.
How can communities better support individuals recovering from drug addiction? How can
communities can support individuals recovering from drug addiction by having programs to equip these people? Because for them to abuse drug, there's some kind of boredom. There is some kind of free time. So when these people come from the rehabilitation, right from the family needs to prepare to occupy them. Communities need to put on programs like football teams for men and football teams for females.
Stay tuned as we prepare for the next story, which is on political unrest in Kenya. Here we will go deeper into the current state of democracy and the power struggle between the government and its people. On our third developing story, we cover unrest in Kenya. Kenya stands at a crossroads as tensions rise between the state and the people. In the heart of the nation's democracy, a power struggle is unfolding, one that questions governance, civil liberties, and the very essence of representation. What does this mean for the future of the country, and how are the citizens responding to the shifting political landscape? We go out to our correspondent to find out more.
Political instability in Kenya has sparked mass protests and debates about governance. Citizens are demanding more accountability, while the government enforces crackdown. Kenya is in turmoil as a fierce power struggle between the government and its people unfolds. What began as public outrage over the controversial financial bill has escalated into nationwide unrest and a breakdown of trust between those in power and the people. Protests took place in the streets in defiance, demanding accountability, but the voices have been met with brutal force. Police crackdowns have turned deadly, with reports of excessive violence and abductions and enforced disappearance of activists. Yet government officials continue to deny the deaths and abductions, dismissing the growing outcry. At the same time, online spaces once a refuge for free speech are now under threat. Platforms like X are being censored, and citizens who criticize the President Ruto's administration face intimidation. We go out on the streets and hear what people have to say.
Hata shetani enyewe amemwacha afanye kazi Kenya. Shetani sasa alienda huko nchi zingine. Hapa Kenya ni Ruto afanye kazi kwa sababu yeye ni rafiki na shetani wameungana hivi. Kwa sababu vitu ambavyo anafanya sio mtu wa kawaida. Kitu ya kwanza ana utu kwa wananchi wa Kenya.
As impunity reigns and fear spreads, Kenya's democracy faces a critical test. The people are pushing back, but will the resistance shape the nation's future, or will the state's grips tighten even further? This is Claire to Sarek.
Have you say and join us through social media on our handle at In The Loop. Thank you for joining us in studio, and now we have a lawyer with us who we have a couple of questions for, hoping that they could enlighten us. The first question is, are current protest laws in Kenya fair?
In my opinion, I do think the current protest laws are fair because they're aligned in the Constitution and the Public Orders Act. What happens is in the implementation, they're implemented unfairly and most times the law isn't followed.
What are the legal consequences that protesters face?
So for us to look at the legal consequences, we have to look at the laws that exist. So the first law that exists is the freedom of assembly, which is in the Constitution of Kenya. The thing is, it's not an absolute right, so that means it can be limited if it's threatening public safety or public order. So there's also the Public Orders Act, which also regulates protest in the sense that you have to have a notice and you also have to follow certain guidelines, because as much as they are trying to allow people to protest, they're also trying to protect public safety. So the thing is, there has to be a balance of rights. So this is also something that's in the law. You have to see which right needs to be balanced more. So in my opinion, I feel like, yes, as much as there are legal consequences, they are fair, but they need to be balanced with public safety and also if the action is actually a crime in the law. Yeah.
And now we have with us a political analyst.
Okay, my name is Patrick. I work at National Media Group as a political reporter. I've been a political and parliamentary editor before.
We have a few questions for you, and the first question is, what factors contribute to the unrest that we have seen over the past year in Kenya?
So there are multiplicity of factors that contribute to the unrest we've seen, mostly the youth unrest that culminated in that very public and international storming of Parliament on June 25th. I would summarize it into three things: political, economic, and just the social aspect of it, which would include just the digital revolution that goes on there. The economic hardships are very clear, and everybody will tell you in this country the cost of living is very high, people don't have jobs, and this youth just feel really frustrated. The people that are driving this unrest feel really frustrated. They have a country where their parents have been paying taxes. They see the cost of goods that they are supposed to buy. They see the cost of education. They see the cost of everything around them. The cost of living is really high. And the frustration is really genuine and immediate, because I think there is a feeling that most of these people either do not listen to what these youth are saying should be done, or when they do the exact opposite. So that economic hardships is the first problem. The second one is just the political hardships and disillusionment that is going on in this country. So the youth are obviously the majority. Kenya is a very young country with a median age of 19.
How has the political landscape changed over the years, especially in 2024 and 2025, with the recent collaboration with the opposition?
Oh, it has changed a great deal. if you were to look at the Kenyan political landscape in October 2024 to what's happening now in March 2025, completely different things. We have a new deputy president. There is an impeached deputy president that is now looking for a new party. We have an opposition that has now gone into government with about a third, maybe even more, of the ministries in government. We have a president that has now gone on a full campaign mode to manage the damage that went on after that impeachment in October 2024. So Kenya has obviously changed a great deal, not just on the political and the politicals that run the country, but the political awareness that goes in this country.
Now we go into our fourth developing story, the Middle East and human rights violations. Tonight we turn our focus to the Middle East, where reports of human rights violations continue to emerge. What exactly is happening, from military conflicts to growing restrictions on freedom? The region remains a hotspot of global concern. Civilians, activists, and entire communities affected, caught in the crossfire of political and military tensions. Where are these violations taking place? Countries across the region, with some facing intense scrutiny over their treatment of citizens. While human rights issues have long been a concern, recent conflicts have intensified the situation. Why does this matter? The world watches closely as international bodies debate their role in holding governments accountable. And how should the global community respond? That's a big question we explore tonight. Join in the discussion on all our social media handles at In the Loop. Thank you for joining us. How do international relations impact conflict in the Middle East?
Well, I would say that the Middle East has attracted a lot of attention. Different players have always tried to come in and help resolve the issues there. Number one, the main conflict in the Middle East has been, let's say, propagated between Israel and Palestine. But due to different countries supporting either side, it has in the past drawn in other countries into the conflict. There was a time when Egypt was drawn in, and there was a time when Jordan was drawn in, Syria. And I would say that many countries around were drawn in because of their support either for either side. Now
we go for a slight commercial break.
Natural vitamin formulation, Fair and Lovely checks the skin darkening process while also protecting against the harmful effects of the sun.
Welcome back to In the Loop. Today we've covered crucial topics such as online safety, drug abuse, political unrest, and human rights violations. These issues impact our daily lives, and it's up to all of us to stay informed and engage. Join us next time for more insightful discussions. This is In the Loop.